Hi y'all, welcome to my shop. You ever want to hold something on your lathe where without tailstock support so you can finish off the bottom of something like a bowl? Have I got a solution for you. Keep watching. In a recent tips video I discussed how I use small scraps and I mentioned jam chucks. Well, this shout out's for Mick King who wanted more details on jam chucks, so let's do it. I think most wood turners use the term jam chuck and friction chuck interchangeably. I tend to think of a jam chuck as one that you can use on the headstock and have the end free without support, although I urge you to use tailstock support for as long as you can and as often as you can, just for safety. So here's an example of a small jam chuck for this small bowl. You can easily make these. They're a great chucking solution for a lot of turning projects. One of the major advantages is there's no chucking marks on the project. Secondly, as you can see here, it runs true. This one ran truer when I made it a couple of years ago for a prop for how to chuck wood, but it does run. These things do run very, very true. In the last, I say a couple of years ago, actually it's probably been 4 years ago, but it's amazing it runs as true as it does, because I haven't done anything with a bowl or this scrap of wood and it still fits. I didn't have to fine tune it. This is a very flexible solution because you can control the size and you're not limited to the constraints of the jaws you have. Let me give you an example. Like I say, one of the techniques that's not bad is if you drill a hole so you can use a large rounded off dowel to pop it out if you have some problems. Otherwise you can take down the edge. Here's one that I made out of a piece of construction 2x6, I guess. It really doesn't make a lot of difference what kind of wood as long as it's dry. Pine, poplar, and most any type of bowl blanket. I use a threaded glue block to hold this one. Here's an example of a piece of pine I could use for a large bowl, and I simply put a recess on the back to put it in a chuck. And I just haven't had a need to use it because I generally use a vacuum chuck, but I did want to show you this technique. You can take these small scraps, ingrained scraps, and you could use it, for example, a small bowl. Let me show you how to free those up. Basically, you're going to take it and just, well, let me show you with this. Before I get into that, this piece of wood is actually, I believe, a piece of poplar. And to free it up, normally you can just tap on the side of your chuck and it'll just pop right out. Normally. But when it doesn't, here's the other great tip. Let me show you. When you do make one of these, first of all, if I wanted to make this go away, I could turn this down, but then that would sacrifice that chuck for future use. So the other way is when you do make them, sometimes it's handy to have a little hole in it that you can put a rod in. I'll probably scratch the bowl, but that'd be alright. Put this little pin in it and just tap it and out it comes, and it didn't do any damage to the bowl. The key is you make the diameter about 1/64 smaller than the object you're going to put on it, and let me put this back in here so I don't have to hold it. And you're going to do a very slight taper, about 1 to 2 degrees. So make it 1/64 smaller. The object that's going to be tapped in there needs to have a slight chamfer, and it's got to be faced off to run true because it's going to register against the bottom. That's how it runs true. So you can, I've already got this made. I'm not going to actually cut it, but I'm just going to show you. In terms of tools, you can use a lot of tools. You can use a beading and parting tool, and again, don't come in straight. Tilt it just a little bit as you make that angle. A square type box scraper works very well, and it's probably what I used for this when I actually made it. Or you can use a parting tool can work as well. Any number of tools. just make a flat wall, a flat straight wall, and just tilt it in just slightly, because actually this thing is acting very similar to a Morse taper. So it's going to fit in there and start getting snug, and then you're just going to pop it in place like that with your hand, and normally you'll just hear it pop, and you're done. Let's see if I can pop it out this time. There we go. And that's how they normally easily come out. You can make these things, this was used as a mandrel, but actually something fitted over it, so you call it a jam chuck. If you overshoot it a little bit, or you're doing it with multiple projects, you may have to fine tune it a little bit by putting a little piece of tape on it, and that works. If you overshoot this just a little bit, you can fine tune it with either a piece of tissue paper or toilet tissue, or if you need something a little bit thicker, you can actually put a piece of paper towel on it, and that'll work fine. Now, some of the different ways you can make chucks. Here's one that's actually made out of a bowl blank. I used this just recently, this past week, at a hands-on workshop on making these little small ring bowls, similar to this. And several people use this chuck. You just use a bowl blank. I'll finish turning a bowl out of this. It's been drying for some time, and again, you just put that slight chamfer. In this case, this is the chamfer a little further down, because this was too large for that particular bowl they were using last. And make that very slight taper, and you've got it. Here's one I did at a workshop this week with Eric Lustrom. Had a great time. What a wonderful instructor. We made these tiny little ingrain boxes that we were decorating. So to finish off the bottom of the box, you use the same piece of wood. You just make the object a little bit smaller and just pop it right out. So there's the inside of the ingrain box. Again, it's been faced off so it'll run true, and it just goes in there, just pops in there. And I can go ahead and finish turning this. You can see how true it's running. I can finish off the bottom. Now, when it comes to the tools you're going to use, or rather the technique, keep in mind that if you come across laterally, you're going to put pressures on it and you're liable to pop it out, which is not a good idea. It does better if you're, for finishing the very bottom of boxes, if you're taking very, very light cuts, you're doing it on the bottom, and perhaps you may even be using some type of scraper where you're coming directly into it and putting pressure on it and coming out, where most of the forces are going this way, and that's a good way to do it. And of course, like I said, use a soft touch, perhaps as long as you can, while you're finishing off something, and then take it away at the last possible moment. Let me show you some examples of how I've used this on some on boxes, because this is a great technique for boxes, and the more often you use it, the luckier you're going to get, the faster it is you're going to be able to get one of these things to match. Just takes a little practice. It is not rocket medicine, so just give it a shot, and I think you're going to like it. So let's look at how we use jam chucks for small boxes.
I'm kind of watching that shadow edge up there to see how that shape is changing. Again, I'm not trying to get the perfect fit now. I want a really tight fit where I can put this on there and use this as a jam chuck to finish the base. Okay, that looks good. Light, delicate cuts, because there's not a lot holding this on that jam chuck. sanding sealer first to seal the wood.
Ease up there with this.
And that reduces the chance of any shredded, pulled fibers leaving too much damage. And we'll be able to reverse chuck this. Matter of fact, I think I'll probably use this and go ahead and clean up the bottom. Get a feel for how big it is. And just make a jam chuck. Getting close. Get in there. And we're just going to, I'm going to bring the handle slightly forward. You can't really see that. This is 90 degrees of the lathe and I'm swinging it forward, getting just a little bit of chamfer on that front end so I can do a trial test. And that's just about got it. Then I can bring the back behind it parallel by going almost straight in and know where to stop. And that's running very true. I think it'll hold it snug enough for me to just take a bit of a pass on the bottom with a very sharp tool. I'm going to use this very small detail gouge because it will not put very much of an edge on the wood, so there'll be very little friction, and I should be able to come right on across, hopefully without pulling it out. So gauge it in from the side, just going very slow. Now I'll just test to see if it's flat because I don't want it to rock. One more pass. I'm just going to slice in. Okay, now all I need to do is touch that up with just a little bit of sandpaper, and then I think I'll probably put a few little decorative grooves. I think that's smooth enough. I can probably just use this 200 and follow it up. Don't need to go finer than 200. Do it 220. The edge. And just touch that up with a little bit of 500. Get in that groove a little bit. So I reached in my scrap box and got a little round tenon left over from some spindle project. And we'll Okay, now all we're going to do is quickly concave the bottom so it'll sit flat, and being not perfectly dry, the wood will move. Fine it. and sneak up on it. There we go. And finish this. This is the final finishing on it. Let's go ahead and sand it a little bit. So we're going to secure it, tilt it slightly just off center. And gradually bring it up. Maybe you can see that little detail.